This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Tonight, the retail doctor is in to help your store survive the financial pandemic. We'll be dispensing prescriptions. Also, is there any such thing as clean coal? Filmmakers, the Coen brothers, say no. We'll show their video and explain. Plus, the Rocky Mountain News, on the stands since 1860 out west, ceases publication. Could a new owner have made a go of it?
When they explained that the Rocky was for sale for a month, it would be very hard in any environment to sell a newspaper in a month.
And we'll hear about the New York Times teaming up with City University students to gather hyper-local news. But first, here are this week's online video picks. Number one is a movie trailer for a documentary called Williamsburg DIY, or Do It Yourself, 2009 by Marcin Ramaki. Let's call this clip The 20-Year History of Hipster Brooklyn in 60 seconds.
It's important to know is that there was a shutting down of the art world because of probably an economic cycle.
Because a bear eats everything.
When enough people started getting here and they did realize they had a group, you had this flowering of a kind of anarchistic creativity.
What I was looking for in the 90s when I was writing was kind of a DIY gallery. And to me, that's a gallery that's run by one guy. You know, if you ask Joe why he started pierogi...
Kind of just stuck in my head, and I just ate the plate of pierogies that day.
It's funny, this critic friend of mine calls it the International Williamsburg style.
All of us can vaguely, grudgingly say we might be hipsters, but we don't. Nobody wants to claim being a hipster.
I am the hipster of Williamsburg. I am the original hipster.
Okay, Williamsburg, the degentrification starts now. Will it be good for the arts? Video pick number two. Do you know you can't get credit, but you're not quite sure why? Here's a visual explanation of the credit crisis as visualized by Jonathan Jarvis.
Here's how it works. A family wants a house, so they save for a down payment and contact a mortgage broker. The mortgage broker connects the family to a lender who gives them a mortgage. The broker makes a nice commission. The family buys a house and becomes homeowners. This is great for them because housing prices have been rising practically forever. Everything works out nicely. One day, the lender gets a call from an investment banker who wants to buy the mortgage. The lender sells it to him for a very nice fee. The investment banker then borrows millions of dollars and buys thousands more mortgages and puts them into a nice little box. This means that every month he gets the payments from the homeowners of all the mortgages in the box. Then he sicks his banker wizards on it to work their financial magic, which is basically cutting it into three slices: safe, okay, and risky. They pack the slices back up in the box and call it a collateralized debt obligation, or CDO. A CDO works like three cascading trays. As money comes in, the top tray fills first, then spills over into the middle, and whatever is left into the bottom. The money comes from homeowners paying off their mortgages. If some owners don't pay and default on their mortgage, less money comes in and the bottom tray may not get filled. This makes the bottom tray riskier and the top tray safer. To compensate for the higher risk, the bottom tray receives a higher rate of return, while the top receives a lower, but still nice return.
Mr. Bernanke, tear down those trays. Video pick number three. The NYU 18 are back in school. The university has rescinded the suspensions of 18 students who occupied the Kimmel Student Center for 2 days last month. Their diverse demands ranged from stable tuition rates to scholarships for students from the Gaza Strip, none of which were met. One of the students involved videotaped the end of the standoff. Here is part of that video, viewed more than 80,000 times on YouTube, under the title, "The Painful Last Minutes of the NYU Kimmel Occupation."
We need to collectively decide. We need to collectively decide how to proceed, and we need our people here in order to do that. Okay? Excuse me. Hey, excuse me. Doors! Doors! What are you doing? You cannot come in here. This is a student's free space. Excuse me. Hands off me. Excuse me. Brutality here. You're on camera. You're on camera. You are on camera. You are on camera. Do not use brutality. You may not detain us. You are on camera. We cannot guarantee cooperation from every individual in the room until we...
There's no cooperation. You guys need to leave.
Okay. All right. We need to democratically decide on that. How to proceed.
I'd like you first to identify yourselves. The
okay.
rules of NYU require that when you're asked for identification, you identify yourselves.
Okay.
If you want to violate that rule too, that's fine.
Okay. We would like to democratically decide in a consensus area. We can do it over in a separate area. Okay, can you...
I'll give you 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Yep.
10 minutes? They're using force. So...
you should be getting that right now.
Hey! You're on camera. You're on camera. You're on camera.
Back up.
He touched me. He grabbed me by the shoulders and pulled me. Don't fucking touch me. Don't give me a fucking word.
Brian! Brian! Brian!
I can't.
Ryan!
I was forced.
Olander! Ryan!
Let me.
We're using consensus on how to proceed. We have 10 minutes. 10 minutes to decide, okay?
And then they left. Don't tase me, bro. Video pick number 4. I will nominate this student for least likely to ever join that group at NYU in the future. Ready? He is 13-year-old Jonathan Crone. Yes, 13. And he was a speaker at last week's Conservative Political Action Committee conference in Washington, D.C.
During the election, I noticed that there were so many people throwing around the word conservative and liberal and socialism. And so I decided that there were too many people who threw the term conservative around who didn't understand what they were talking about. They didn't understand what conservatism was. They didn't understand conservatism as a base of principle, but they understood it as a base of policy. Many people have come up to me and said, so you're a Republican, you know, you get up there and you do this Republican stuff and you talk about politics, and I always have to tell them that no, conservatism is not about the party, because the party's merely the shell. It's the inside, it's the filling that really means something. So I want to get that straight. But in the book, I define conservatism, and as I believe it is fit, upon 4 categories of principle: respect for the Constitution, respect for life, less government, and personal responsibility.
Well, when someone is that intellectual and that conservative at 13, what are they going to be like when they're 40? Stick around 27 years and you may find out. And video pick number 5 from Current.com, the latest offering at New York's Parsons School of Design. No students are boycotting this. It's how to get famous on the internet.
Hi, I'm Andrew Mahan. I'm taking Internet Famous class at Parsons New School for Design. Internet Famous is this concept of notoriety on the internet, be it YouTube views or website hits or maybe a Wikipedia page with lots of edits.
This class is all about the art and science of getting hits, getting eyeballs, extracting stuff out of the attention economy. Views, comments, blog links, reblogs, followers, MySpace friends. All of that stuff is a reflection of how much attention your work is getting on the web.
So in Internet Famous class, the only thing that's going to determine my grade at the end of the semester is how famous I can get. There's software that scrapes the web and looks at how popular you are, how many hits you get on YouTube, et cetera, and mashes it together into a grade.
All the students' grades are a function of an algorithm that goes out and finds out how famous they are on the internet.
I think the internet has fundamentally changed the society that we're in. And I think that as a university, we're constantly asking questions about what that means to our interaction, our community.
It's also really interesting to have a chance to experiment with understanding how to leverage these various like social networks or sort of social systems that exist. And you know, I thought it should be fun to, you know, get famous.
So let's see, fame for fame's sake, the new goal of a college education? And those are this week's online video picks. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Each week we try to lend a hand to New Yorkers hit by the recession. Today, retail. If you have a shop in the city, big or small, what can you do to stay afloat when customers spend less or don't come at all? We all know from the empty storefronts and 70% off signs that this is happening. With us, the retail doctor himself, Bob Phibbs. He wrote the book, You Can Compete. Also here, David J. Louie, who chairs the Chinese Chamber of Commerce here in New York. Welcome, both of you. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you,
Retail doctor, I assume that business is good, or a lot of retailers knocking at your door right now?
Certainly. Everybody who wants to be in business is looking, what can I do to survive? You're hit on the head.
Do you have certain types of businesses that come to you most frequently?
You know, it's all over the map. Everything from toy stores to window fashions to hardware to designers to vehicles. It's all over the map.
Yeah, but who's coming now? Who's in trouble?
Who isn't in trouble? If you weren't making money in the last 4 or 5 years, then you probably weren't doing a very good business. And so it's like the chickens have come home to roost.
Before we hear some Chinatown examples, maybe we should tick off some of the things that come to my mind, at least, that you might recommend to struggling businesses. And you tell me if this is where you go or not.
Okay.
Slashing prices.
Okay, if that's all you've got in your quiver, I mean, anybody can be a discount whore. If you want to live your life that way, you are going to be condemned to live it, because that's it.
We're seeing it everywhere.
Right, but the problem with retail right now is, look, people go out and shop to feel better. So the fact that it's 70% off doesn't mean I feel better. I was just at Macy's an hour ago, and I still have the 3 counter help, 3 people standing in front of a counter talking about how there's no business. Meanwhile, the store is full of people. I go into independent retailers. I was just at an independent retail trying to find a tie. Same thing. And I have to ask myself, how serious are you? You know, we just saw in that last segment about personal responsibility is a hallmark of conservatism. And yet everybody's saying, I didn't get my stimulus plan. If anybody's getting any money, you're part of the bailout. Shut up and let's get to work.
People don't feel good about getting 70% off on a tie at Macy's.
But it's garbage. I mean, it's not that we need it, but we feel more lonely shopping now because nobody pays attention or values us. And frankly, America lost our way because we don't believe in selling anything anymore.
Okay,
Need to say, that's me.
Based on that answer, I think I'm going to anticipate your answer to my next category, improve customer service.
We'll just have, I think it's time we stop calling it customer service. To me, that is like this gray, you know, we just all value all of our guests, and they're all guests with us like Disney. That's ridiculous. There's customers and there's salespeople. Now, if you're going to hire salespeople, that's what an entrepreneur looks for. You know, Bill Gates didn't suddenly get the idea and say, if somebody comes to me, I'll give them my Windows per-up. They aggressively went out and did it. That's what America was built on. W.H. Macy would be shocked at the state of retail because it was always about how do I help that customer buy stuff in my store, not stack it and hope they come.
So you think we're living in an age of deteriorated customer service?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So no wonder people are on the internet. If I'm going to feel bad when I go into your store, why wouldn't I be on the internet? So if you want to compete, the only thing you can control is your 4 walls. And I have clients that are up 38%, 20%, 15%, and all they keep asking me is, am I missing something? And yeah, they are, because they're paying attention to what's important.
We'll come back and we'll keep ticking off some other items on my list after we introduce David Louie from the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. Who do you represent?
I represent the Chinese businessmen businessmen and women in the Chinese community. And the Chinese community, while we can say Chinatown, it extends to all Chinese all over New York City.
So the average person not from Chinatown is going to think, oh, businesses in Chinatown, that's mostly restaurants, is it?
Oh, that's true, and it's a shame. because we have a lot more than just restaurants. As a matter of fact, on one particular street, we have 10 beauty salons and hair salons to go to. Canal Street, for the jewelry trade, is now rivaling, or certainly rivaling, 47th Street, the Diamond Center.
Is that right?
Oh, to be sure.
People coming from all over when they're going to get married and engaged and that kind of thing?
Oh, when you talk about marriage, we have bridal salons, at least 6 top-grade bridal salons in the Chinatown area.
How's everybody doing?
Not well. Not well. Unfortunately, because of the recession, first we lost our core business. Right? Chinatown today is not the Chinatown of our grandfathers. Right? The Chinatown of our grandfathers was Chinese or Asian people, and in those days we didn't have that many Koreans. It was Filipinos. We certainly didn't have any Cambodians, Vietnamese. So it was Chinese and Filipinos shopping in Chinatown and buying, eating. And you might call it the best kept secret in New York, because we didn't publicize it. But we had that core.
It was for the immigrant community itself.
Right. And we had that core business, and that kept the economy going. Today, that core community is no longer coming back because we have big Asian communities in New Jersey, in Queens.
You can go to Chinatown in Sunset Park. You can go to Chinatown in Flushing.
You can go to a Korean supermarket in Fort Lee, New Jersey, or in Edison, New Jersey, a Chinese supermarket, and go to get all your goods. So our retail customers, our retail shop owners have to find another way to get new customers coming in.
Tourists?
Now, tourists, of course, was great in the boom years. And if you want to call the boom years prior to 4 months ago, that's fine, because we did. We had plenty of tourists coming here. And unfortunately, even with the weak dollar, encouraged even more tourists to come here. Right? But now, between losing your old core, your old Asian core of business, and losing tourists, we've got to educate the retail shop owners, and that's why I'm glad to be sitting next to you,
my friend.
Yeah, as to what we can do to stimulate new group of customers.
You might have to pay for his advice in some other setting.
I'm sure it's be well worth it.
Dr. Phibbs?
That's right.
Where does he start?
You're right on. It's change. And people, when you lose your regulars and you believe your own PR that, oh, we're great, everybody loves us, we just need more bodies. And then usually when I come into a place, I do a business makeover and I look at all the internet sites for Yelp and I look at people talking about your business and I do mystery shops, and lo and behold, a business coming in at 50%, 40% on a 100-point mystery shop, it isn't a mystery to me, because you can only burn through people so much, and then there's really nothing left. So many businesses just have to come back to their 4 walls. Why aren't they coming back? And how do I remind them of the good time they had? And you know, one of the surprising things, Brian, is that 70% of independent business don't even have a website. Now, to me, as an entrepreneur, I can't imagine that. But 70% say, "Oh, I don't need it. I've got my regulars." And no, you don't.
Or a friend of mine is a retail owner, and he says, "I've never set up a website because it's just me and my wife running this business, and we're over our heads already. We don't have time."
Right. So good. Then don't adapt. And as you go out of business, then please don't be on CNN with your foreclosure sign and, oh, woe is me, because I'm hearing none of it. If you want to change, the American story is hard work and do it. Immigrant community, no different. We're going to come here. We're not going to have anything. I come from a bunch of Irish lads that came into Virginia, lived in poverty. My grandfather built homes in the Depression because he said, I'm not going to be like my grandfather who had everything taken away from him for back taxes. And I sit here today because my grandfather had leverage. And he said, not me. Well, that's what America is. That's what your community is working on. Not me. I'm not going to go out. Now, if you want to go out painfully twisting in the wind, woe is me, where's my stimulus? It's all Bush or Obama. That's missing the point. It's personal responsibility. That's what makes America great.
How many of your businesses have websites, do you think?
Probably a little bit better, not bad. I would say less than 10%.
Less than 10%
I would
do
said,
have websites.
Yes, because you do have a younger generation there, and the younger generation are attuned to that. what we've got to do
I
is
was walking in Chinatown a couple of months ago, and I stumbled upon an internet cafe, $1 an hour for internet access.
There are fantastic blogs.
$1 an hour, and in there was overwhelmingly, like college-age Chinese kids.
Exactly. What we have to do is get the collective 90% who don't have websites and don't know much about marketing. We have to educate them on marketing and say, look, we can do it collectively. We can not keep it a best-kept secret anymore, and let the rest of New York and the rest of the world know that you can get $1 on the internet. You can get the best fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables, meats, fish, at very reasonable pricing to go along with your excellent Chinese meal.
There you go. So I asked you about improving customer service, slashing prices, going online, change your product lines?
Possibly. Are you wed to it? A lot of people in retail like to buy stuff. Didn't matter that it necessarily sold, but they like to buy it. And my thing is, look at your inventory. How much, if you're holding $100,000 inventory and you only sold $50,000 a year, it's going to take you 2 years to get out, or, to get out of here. We need to cut that down a lot, which is why so many retailers were putting stuff at 70% off. The numbers didn't match. The problem is they've damaged, Saks and all these other big companies have damaged their own brand so much that now everybody looks at it and goes, well, geez, 70% off. How much was I being overcharged to begin with?
How about that? How about go leaner? Go leaner, lay people off.
I think the reality comes down to you staff for the rush. So if you're going to be laying people off, then if Saturday's your big day, you're not going to across the board cut it. You're going to cut it down you're going to cut your hours down, or maybe you're going to cut one person down 1 day a week. But too many businesses, perfect example, I'm at Hertz in LA last week. I try to get my car. I'm waiting a half hour for a bus, and that's on my blog at retaildoc.com. 4 other competitors go by. And when I get on the bus finally, the kid says, oh, we're sorry it took so long. We laid off too many people. We're trying to catch up. Now, the very thing Hertz promises is skip the counter and skip the wait. If it takes me an hour to get my car, I'm not going back there. And that's no different than in a coffee house or a restaurant. If you're going to lay people off, the biggest trend, the LA Times, New York Times talked about, they're laying off the bus boys and making the waiters do that. So now the tables are dirtier, you're waiting longer, the service is getting surlier. How is that a recipe to succeed?
So I'm sure there are business owners out there watching you right now and thinking, wait, but this is the recession. My sales are down 65%, and you're telling me
nobody's sales are down 65%.
Staff for a rush and not to lower my prices.
Right. I'm telling you, raise your prices if you have to. You walk away from business if it's not profitable. It's that simple.
You have any questions for him?
No. As a matter of fact, I agree with him. I have a business. I run an insurance agency, and I have 32 workers working for me. And I've told them, I says, look, you hear about laying off and the recession, or taking Fridays off unpaid, or taking an extra vacation. No. I says, I'm not laying anybody off, but we all have to work harder. We all have to reach out to the customer. And we have products, and maybe we're only selling one product. Might be just insurance, might be just home insurance, or in his case, it might be guy comes in every morning and has his coffee. You've got to suggest. It says, don't you want a donut with this coffee and increase the sale? You've got to suggest, don't you want auto insurance with your home insurance? Right? You've got to say thank you. You've got to work harder, and then retain it. We're not concerned. If you've got to take, if you want to retain your job, you've got to go the extra mile.
So here's the radical notion. I just have to get this out. Just fire the people that aren't doing it and start up again. Seriously, now's the time. Cull the herd. We're cutting down the dead grass. There is so many people should never be in retail. They should be stacking pants at Walmart, not trying to do customer service. And you cannot teach someone to be nice to somebody and smile. If they basically don't like people, they shouldn't be in customer service. And that's the other trap we fell into, that in the go-go 90s, we kept hiring people that didn't belong in there.
So where did you buy your tie, after all?
This tie, in spite of everything, that's another story.
The new one.
The new tie.
You went tie shopping today, right? You looked at Macy's and you looked at an
In spite of everything, I was at Lord & Taylor because they were right up here. And in spite of no one talking to me for 10 minutes, I ended up buying it, and she couldn't even say thank you. Will I be back?
Maybe if they have a nice tie.
Double.
I'd like to tell your viewers that they can get the tie, just as nice tie down in Chinatown.
All right.
At 3 for $10.
There you go. You're doing your job. He took your advice.
Good.
Thank you both very much. Coming up is clean coal an oxymoron. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues.
Watch Canapé, the French cultural magazine show, Thursdays on CUNY TV.
Mama was queen of the mambo, Papa was king of the Congo. Deep down in the jungle, I started banging my first bongo. Every monkey like to be in my place instead of me, 'cause I'm the king of bongo, baby, I'm the king of bongo bong. I went to the big town where there is a lot of sound, from the jungle to the city looking for a bigger crown. So I play my boogie for the people of big city, but they don't go crazy when I'm banging on my boogie. I'm the king of the bongo, king of the bongo bong. Hear me when I come, baby. King of the bongo, king of the bongo bong. Nobody like to be in my place instead of me, 'cause nobody go crazy when I'm banging on my boogie. I'm a king without a crown, hanging loose in a big town, but I'm a king of bongo, baby, I'm the king of bongo bong.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Don't say that. You don't have to.
Look at it, people, a little bit more creative. I'm going to say nothing.
Left-handed people are smart.
They are.
Dad, do you want to get the phone?
No.
Every year, 1 million families face losing their homes to foreclosure. If you're ignoring your mortgage issues, things will only get worse. Call 1-888-995-HOPE, because nothing is worse than doing nothing.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. A funny video got us asking a serious question this week. Is there any such thing as clean coal? The witty video, funded by a coalition of environmental groups, was directed by the Academy Award-winning Coen brothers. Check it out.
Smells so clean. Is regular clean clean enough for your family? Not when you can have Clean Coal Clean. Clean coal harnesses the awesome power of the word clean to make it sound like the cleanest clean there is. Clean coal is supported by the coal industry, the most trusted name in coal.
That ad can be found at thisisreality.org. You might catch it on TV as well. But is its cautionary message the whole story? Coal provides half our electricity in this country. Can we really do without it? And the industry claims they burn coal today 73% cleaner than they could in the 1970s. Let's sort this out. Joining us, George Paridis, Science Fellow at the Natural Resources Defense Council, the environmental group and a funder of that ad, and via Skype, Andrew Revkin, environmental reporter who writes the New York Times blog, .earth. Welcome to the program. Thanks very much for coming on.
Pleasure to be here.
Andrew Revkin, let's see. Do we have Andrew up? I just want to make sure we have our connection to Andrew. Okay, Andrew, give us a little overview here. What is the use of coal in the United States at this point? How much of it do we use, and primarily for what?
Well, there's just one company, Peabody Energy, sells about 300 million tons a year and growing every year. They're actually exporting some as well. Coal is primarily used to generate electricity. There's a small amount used for heat here and there. Even some when oil prices spiked, some homeowners, as we wrote in the Times, started looking at coal burning stoves. But it's really electricity, and same thing around the world. China is, growing rapidly their use of electricity, at least until this year because of the economic troubles, and coal is king there too.
And it's that expansion of coal-fired power plants in China, and I think they're opening like one a day or something. You probably know the stat. That is one of the points of contention between the United States and China on what kind of a global warming treaty to come to. Correct, Andrew?
Absolutely. We've spent 100 years, and Europe pretty much getting rich and industrial by burning coal and other fossil fuels, and China and India are just getting into gear, and they're really saying in these treaty talks, well, it's kind of our turn. You guys added the burden of greenhouse gases that's in the atmosphere now, so you step first. And that's going to be a tough, even for the Obama administration, to break through on. The Bush administration didn't have much luck, and neither did Clinton, Gore, nor the first Bush.
Right.
It's a tough issue.
It's tough,
about who
and
steps first.
George, to some degree, it's tough because it's a source of regional dispute. My understanding is that here in the New York area, we don't get much of our electricity from coal-fired plants, but in Michigan, for example, where the recession has hit so hard, they get about half. So that might pit different regions of the country against each other, and I realize you're more of a scientist than a policy major, but they, Michigan might be more resistant to, say, a carbon tax that makes energy more expensive for them than the New York area would be. Do you think?
I don't think that's the right frame of mind to think about a carbon tax or a cap and invest or a cap and trade scheme. What that would be trying to do is to reorganize and reinvent how we use energy and what emissions are produced in the meantime. There are a lot of much cleaner and affordable solutions that can create good green jobs and stimulate the economy while we move away from coal.
The idea of clean coal, do you reject the concept? Obviously, the ad that your group helped to fund totally mocks it, but is there nothing to it?
Well, there are many issues hidden behind that question, and I think that's exactly what the coal industry is playing out right here. They're very happy to put up the word clean coal, the phrase clean coal as a label, but when you actually look at the environmental track record of coal, they have done very, very little to achieve meaningful improvements. And I can think of a number of examples that start from the mining side, the upstream side of coal in the West, in the Appalachian region, where there's such a technique called man-stop removal mining, which amounts to nothing less than an abomination. And then moving all the way to the downstream use of coal, what pollutants are emitted during its combustion, and surely you didn't miss the TVA coal ash spill around about the new year.
In Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly.
I should mention that we were going to have on this show, and everyone had agreed to it, a representative from the coal industry who was flying here from Washington, but his flight got delayed and he didn't make it, so we'll have to bring you him at a later date. So Andrew Revkin from the New York Times, I'll cast you in the journalist role to explain some of the things that the representative of the coal industry might have said. For example, this stat that they cite, coal is 73% cleaner burning than it was in the 1970s, or at least some of it is. Can you break apart that number? What does that 73% refer to? Do you know?
Well, it's talking about conventional pollution. This is the old-fashioned kind of sooty and sulfurous pollution that was dealt with under the Clean Air Act. There's still parts of the country that have significant problems from that kind of emissions. That's the actual smoky stuff. But we have come quite a ways in cleaning those things up. The industry went along with 1990 updates to the Clean Air Act, and sulfur is subject to this cap and trade kind of system and has greatly been reduced. There's a move toward getting the mercury out of coal emissions as well. But all of this is a smokescreen in the end for the question of clean coal in the context of global warming, which is really what everyone's talking about these days. When you hear President Obama, who talks about it as well, or a politician from the Midwest, or some people at NRDC, actually, David Hawkins at NRDC, they will say that there is a possibility of capturing the carbon dioxide from a coal-burning power plant and sticking it in the ground for long-term storage, essentially. The problem there, and the reason some environmental groups actually see it as part of the menu, or did until recently, is because you kind of can't get there from here without it. If there's so much coal still to be burned, and so many countries that plan on burning it, that it'll take years to put in place a cap and trade system or a climate treaty at the international level that would really ratchet that down. So in the meantime, if you don't have the ability to capture that gas, compress it, stick it in the ground, you'll see a significant amount of greenhouse gas increase.
And what a concept, burying carbon dioxide in the ground. It sounds more like nuclear waste.
Well, there's so many issues attending doing this at a scale that the atmosphere will ever notice. That's the thing. I've done a lot of coverage on the blog on .earth, and we have in the print paper of just what it would entail. And the MIT did a big study a couple of years ago called The Future of Coal. And a chunk of that was looking at this idea of capturing carbon dioxide. And essentially they said the world is not even remotely engaged in the level of research and development and demonstration, like large-scale experimental power plants, to see if they could even do this at the sort of the billion-ton scale. Remember, the atmosphere, we're pumping 30 billion tons of CO2 into the air or so every year. So if you're not in the gigaton range, you're not even really remotely, you know, in the realm of what the climate would notice.
That's a lot of gas to bury underground.
It's a lot of gas.
George Paredes, Andrew mentioned that NRDC, or at least some people at NRDC, were until recently for the development of clean coal technology as a goal. Were you, and did that change for some reason?
Let me be clear, nothing has changed. We've been consistent in our messaging, and we actually believe that the technology exists today to start capturing and safely disposing of the CO2 gases from power plants right now.
In the way that he was describing?
Exactly.
This burial.
Yes. And the reason we engaged in those ads was to call the coal industry on its two-phase strategy right now, which consists on one hand of trying to attach this clean label on coal, but on the other hand, actively lobbying Congress against the enactment of climate legislation or performance standards that would actually mandate or require the use of this technology.
So, from a science standpoint, let me ask you about some of the terms that I've heard. One is carbon capture and sequestration. Is that the same thing? Because that sounds nice, and, you know, treating carbon kind of like an outlaw. You capture it, and then you sequester it. You put it in jail. Is that the same thing? Is that the burial?
It's the same thing as storage. Sequestration was a slightly older term which has not come back into fashion. But really, we're talking about permanent disposal. It goes in the ground, and it stays there forever.
And what about coal gasification? What's that?
Coal gasification has to do with how coal is used. And there are many different ways of separating the carbon dioxide from the actual coal plant. Gasification means you take the coal of other fuel, such as petroleum coke, and you blast it with heat, and it essentially turns into a gas. And what you're left with is a high-pressure product. You strip the CO2 out of that, and then you're burning what really is clean hydrogen.
Feasible?
Absolutely. It's been done already. There are plants around the world running and actually capturing CO2 from that process.
Is it the solution?
It is one of the solutions. I don't think it's the preferred solution. There are much cheaper and environmentally preferable solutions that we have available today, such as increasing energy efficiency and utilizing renewable energy. But a safe and prudent strategy to reducing CO2 emissions at the rate and scale needed also includes carbon capture and sequestration.
Now, even as he asked his audience to remember the coal miner, the notion of clean coal was derided at an alternative energy conference last weekend called PowerShift 09, held in Washington, D.C. Here's part of a speech by Van Jones. Jones wrote the book, The Green Collar Economy.
Now, if we are going to have a movement that includes everybody, we got to really include everybody. Let me tell you what that means. That means this movement has to also include the coal miners. The coal miners. They are people too. They are people too. And they have to be included. Now I'm going to tell you this. All that clean coal stuff. All that clean coal stuff. Now, I'm going to tell you right now. We could have clean coal. I'm for clean coal. But I'll tell you what. If we're going to have clean coal, let's have a couple other things. We could have clean coal, or if we could power the country with clean coal, or we could have unicorns pull our cars for us, like, you know, all day. We could have that too. Equally fictitious, equally fantastical, equally ludicrous, you know. So, you know, we could have the tooth fairy bring us our energy at night. I mean, equally ludicrous. There is no such thing as a tooth fairy. There is no such thing as unicorns, and there is no such thing as clean coal. So let's be clear about that.
Okay, the tooth fairy, the healthy cigarette, clean coal, says Van Jones. But I'm not sure I get it. Does he want to have it both ways here, saying there's really no way to save coal as a producer of energy for the United States, but he wants to take care of the coal miner and their jobs? How can you have it both those ways?
I don't think there's any contradiction here. Calling coal clean is something that will take a lot more effort before we actually get there. And this entails everything from the upstream mining side to all the pollutants that are emitted, and CO2 is only one of them. Does the technology exist today to dispose of the CO2 pollution underground? Yes, it does.
Andrew, is the answer just conservation and renewables? I know we like to think that it is, but how quickly can we convert the United States from fossil fuels to renewables and conservation when we're facing a crisis?
Even if you left off the last part of the sentence, this would be an epic challenge. We took the energy system we have evolved over a century, and there's no indication from the energy technology experts and historians that I speak to almost literally every day, several times a day, about these issues, that this can happen in a rapid way without a significant cost, because the alternatives, the renewables, still are far more expensive than coal at the current price, which doesn't include the cost of climate change and all that stuff. So if you drive up the current price with a tax or a cap or something, there may come a time when a renewable energy source like wind power at large scale or solar could get competitive. But the gap is so large that people say you really have to improve the technology too. And I've written a ton of stories since 2006 looking at this, our declining history, our total disinterest in energy research in this country, and also in all the other developed countries. It's just been not even on the burner. Healthcare, we do a lot of research. The space race, we did a huge amount of initiatives to improve things, to revolutionize technologies. But on energy, we've been kind of just sort of in our fossil comfort zone.
Andrew Revkin, you can see his work on the New York Times environment blog, .earth. Andy, thanks a lot for doing this with us tonight. And
this is fun.
George Paredes, is that the next step then, what he says, this research? Now, when President Obama says that his long-term 10-year budget is going to be based around reform in education, energy, and healthcare, does that budget fund this new energy technology research that Andy was talking about?
I don't think that the primary need here is research. I think history is written by people like you and me in the rooms and the labs and the factories and the boardrooms every day. And the fact that you haven't seen that kind of rapid movements towards the clean energy technologies that we need is not a function of lacking research, but it is that there is no steady and reliable market signal that the private sector can use to invest in those technologies.
Right. The market signal would be the price, though, right? If they could heat my apartment building for the same dollar per winter that they're doing it now with something renewable rather than oil or whatever, then they would be doing it, wouldn't they?
No, they wouldn't, because there are a number of market failures that actually provide a disincentive to adopt measures that would otherwise save you money. And this is exactly what we need to be looking at right now, trying to bring these solutions that already exist to the market. I'm not saying that we don't need any new research. Obviously we do. But the array of tools that are needed to start this energy revolution are available to us today.
How do you bring it to market?
We need climate legislation that is going to place limits on CO2 emissions. That is going to provide the overwhelming signal to the private sector.
That's going to force the market. If you just place the limit, you say we can't pollute the earth or keep us dependent on Saudi Arabia any more than X tons of emissions, however you want to measure that cap, then you're saying that's going to force the marketplace to develop these alternative technologies in a user-friendly and affordable way.
Deploy and develop. But to support such a scheme, you need individual policies that will target sectors one by one. You need clean vehicles. You need sustainable biofuels. You need more efficient buildings, that you need regulations for that, and so on.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to be here.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Now, after 150 years, Colorado's Rocky Mountain News published its final edition last Friday. Denver's tabloid paper lost $16 million last year. Any newspaper, even the New York Times, could follow in the coming years. Why couldn't the Rocky adapt to the digital age? And how are some papers doing just that? We'll discuss this in a minute. First, let's watch part of this video eulogy to the Rocky Mountain News, produced by Matthew Roberts, posted on Vimeo last week.
All of the reporters who were in the newsroom were gathered around the news desk, and two of the top people from corporate, from Scripps, were there. And immediately, when you see that scene, given what's happening to journalism across the country, they're not there to tell you good news. When they explained that the Rocky was for sale for a month, it would be very hard in any environment to sell a newspaper in a month.
This is a newsroom, so I doubt I actually need to give you the headline. Most of you probably already know, but we're going to announce just in the next few minutes that we're going to put the Rocky Mountain News up for sale. Something that would have been unthinkable just a few months ago. But I think, we're suddenly finding a time in this industry and in this economy when the unthinkable has become the commonplace, unfortunately.
That was a difficult and shocking announcement. And do you know what the reaction of so many people in the newsroom was? To whip out a notebook and a pen and start taking notes. Now, a few of us were writing about it, but not all of us. But that's what we do. It's in our DNA.
We've been struggling with this for probably, really struggling 6 months to a year.
So, why did the Rocky go under? And how can newspapers make it in the age of the pixel? Mike Noe is the online editor of the Rocky Mountain News. He joins us via Skype from Denver. And John Landman is here in our studio. He's deputy managing editor of the New York Times for digital journalism. Welcome to both of you. Mike Noe, tell our New York audience more. Why did the Rocky Mountain News shut down?
Well, the Rocky Mountain News was part of a joint operating agreement with the Denver Post. And actually, I think that the best way to put it is to say that because of the business agreement between the two newspapers, the market couldn't support them. And because they were in this joint operating agreement that was sanctioned by the Justice Department, it was also difficult for the Rocky to escape, an agreement that was made 10 years ago. So, in essence, the market couldn't support two newspapers, even though they were both very popular here in Denver.
Do you think that this is a cautionary tale for other two-paper cities? Is it a cautionary tale either for one newspaper cities in America, or is this just a unique situation to Denver?
I don't think it's a unique situation. I think every newspaper should be worried right now. If you look around the industry right now, San Francisco, Seattle, Tucson, Arizona, these are towns that have papers that are on the edge, newspapers that are up for sale. I think what's happening, quite honestly, is the internet is destroying newspapers, which is ironic because I'm the interactive editor, the internet editor here at the Rocky, or was. And, I was charged with actually trying to save papers or be a part of that team that was here to save newspapers. To answer your question, yes, they should definitely be concerned, and I think that newspaper owners need to be much more aggressive in trying to make the jump from print to online.
Which brings us to John from the New York Times. That's part of your job in a business sense, is to help make that jump from the print edition to the online edition, or at least better integrate, or is your job strictly at the level of journalism?
Well, I'm a journalist, and I've been an editor and a reporter all my career, so I'm not a brilliant business person. Business considerations have probably moved a little closer to journalism because of the way the online system works and because of the problems of journalism, of newspapers.
Right. So a lot of our viewers have probably seen some New York Times content online.
I certainly hope so.
Is there an overall vision for integrating the print edition and the online content that's easily describable?
Well, at the level of the newsroom, the vision is to gradually erase the distinction between a print journalist and an online journalist, which means acquiring new skills. It means understanding the form much better. And I think, above all, it means learning to collaborate with an audience in a way that's quite new for people who are accustomed to writing articles and having people read them.
Collaborate with an audience.
That's right. Well, the nature, the sort of fundamental nature of online journalism is that the audience is not passive anymore. It's active. And if you have the kind of audience that we have, of enormously sophisticated, curious, people, then it's an amazing opportunity, because if you can mobilize this group of people who know so much collectively, your journalism can be better and you can serve people better.
So, for example, you have an experiment going now with hyperlocal, I think you're calling it, New York Times journalist, bloggers, covering a couple of neighborhoods in Brooklyn and a few towns in New Jersey, in conjunction, we should mention, with students at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism.
Right.
What are you up to?
Well, that's very much about collaboration, because as local newspapers struggle and cut, the quality of local coverage suffers. What we're hoping to do here is to see if we can, by the way, hyperlocal is not our term. We didn't make it up. People have been trying to figure out community-level online journalism for 15 years.
So what's the difference between local and hyperlocal?
Well, local is the metro section. Hyperlocal is Clinton Hill in Brooklyn, or Maplewood and Millburn and South Orange in New Jersey. And it's a different beast. Our local coverage, in the case of the New York Times, our local, what we mean by local is New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. That's something like 30 million people.
Right. So this is at the neighborhood level, Clinton Hill and
That's
Fort
right.
Greene, right, in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn.
And those towns you mentioned in
That's
Jersey, Maplewood, Millburn, South Orange.
Right. And the idea is to bring our kind of journalistic sensibility to community-level journalism, to get people in the community to make it clear what they think is important, to ask the questions they want answered, and for us and the CUNY students to help them understand and to give them the tools and to teach them how to answer them. And the journalistic guidance and judgment that we bring to this, I think, is very important, because the democracy of the internet in journalistic terms is not self-executing.
Mike No in Denver, did you try anything like that? Did you try for internet salvation of the print edition? And does anything remain? Somebody told me that there is sort of a Rocky Mountain News that still exists now, online only.
Well, the official Rocky Mountain News website is dormant now. Basically, it's the last edition that we put up. In fact, the video that you just showed at the beginning of the segment is what is there. But we do have a website called IWantMyRocky.com, which was created when our owners announced that they were selling the newspaper. Now it has become somewhat of a gathering place for both journalists and for the community to go to. It's nonprofit. We don't have a profit model around that yet, and I don't believe that there are any plans to do that. I would agree with what John said about hyperlocal. I would add to that yes, we did. We tried. We've been very aggressive the past couple of years. We've used web tools or other web applications such as Twitter, Flickr during the Democratic National Convention. We engaged our readers, and actually we originally used these tools as a way to get information to our site very quickly. One of the things that we noticed is there's an entire community out there that formed and began communicating back with us and talking back with us. During the announcement at the Rocky, I was actually set up with my laptop there in the newsroom and using Twitter to share what was being said by our CEO as he was announcing that he was closing the Rocky Mountain News. Interesting, because I had a window next to what I was typing that showed what people were saying back to us. People asked, "Is the Rocky Mountain News? Does that mean the website's closing down?" I get an answer.
That's the old model of journalism is writing articles and getting paid for it. The new model of journalism is Twittering for free. John, the New York Times hyperlocal blogs just debuted the other day. They haven't always been received so far with open arms by everybody in those communities. Those happen to be very blogger-rich areas of New Jersey and Brooklyn that you chose. Is this competition from, the big bad gray lady that's actually going to squeeze out the on-the-ground hyperlocal people?
I hope not. I think our notion of this is collaborative. And one thing you find, all these communities are full of bloggers and, people with their bulletin boards, all kinds of stuff. What is hard for people who are interested in the information is to pull them all together. They tend to do different things well. You're right. New Jersey, particularly, oddly enough, Maplewood, Milburn, and South Orange, those very same towns, another hyperlocal site opened just a few weeks ago. And they're very different from us.
Why not bring in those bloggers and pay them?
Well, they're not bloggers exactly. Whether we can pay them will depend on whether you can build a sustaining model for these sites. And the reason hyperlocal, as I said, has been going on a long time, and there have been really only a handful of self-sustaining ones.
We're almost out of time. Tell our viewers where they can see this work.
Well, the easiest way, instead of reciting long URLs, is to go to the City Room blog on the New York Times website, nytimes.com.
/cityroom.
/cityroom. No, it's not how
No, it's not? Okay, I'm sorry.
Let's avoid URL.
Okay, NY Times.
Right. Go to the New York Times website, click on the New York region section, and then you can scroll down and you'll find a link to these local sites.
Good luck with
it's
it.
Called
I hope
The
it
Local.
Works. The Local. I hope it works.
Thank you. So do I.
And Mike No, good luck to everybody from the Rocky Mountain News.
Thank you.
And that's it for this week's show. We are here live Wednesday nights at 7:30 or anytime online at brianlehrer.tv. Next week, Broadway, the pedestrian walkway experiment. And tune into my daily radio show, 10 a.m. on WNYC Radio. Tomorrow morning, Gladys Carrion, head of the New York State Task Force on Juvenile Justice. Some big changes afoot in that area. That's 10 a.m. on WNYC 93.9 FM and AM 820. Have a great night.